Vampire Vanquisher. Chapter 1. The Hunter Emerges. The village lay shrouded in darkness, the moon hidden behind thick clouds that cast eerie shadows across the landscape. It was a night like many others in this world, where the absence of light brought with it an ever-present terror. The villagers huddled in their homes, praying that the night would pass without incident. But tonight, their prayers went unanswered. A scream pierced the silence. Outside, a vampire stood over a terrified villager, its red eyes glowing with hunger. Sharp fangs gleamed in the dim light as it prepared to strike. The villager, a young man with wide, fearful eyes, could only manage a desperate shout. "Somebody, help us!" The vampire's claws extended, ready to deliver a fatal blow. Suddenly, a silver stake shot through the air, piercing the vampire's heart with unerring accuracy. The creature let out a blood-curdling scream, its body convulsing before collapsing to the ground, lifeless. From the shadows emerged a figure cloaked in black, his eyes cold and determined. This was Vincent Vale, known to some as the Vampire Vanquisher. In his hand, he held a specialized crossbow, the weapon still smoking from its deadly discharge. "Your reign of terror ends here," Vincent said, his voice as icy as his gaze. The villagers began to gather, their fear mingling with awe as they watched the stranger who had saved them. Among them stood Eleanor, a young priestess clutching a holy symbol, her eyes, filled with a mixture of hope and curiosity, fixed on the mysterious figure before her. "Who is he?" she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Vincent moved forward, his expression unchanged as he approached the fallen vampire. He knelt beside it, retrieving the silver stake and cleaning it with practiced ease. For a moment, the memory of his past flickered in his mind. Vivid images of a young boy watching in horror as vampires attacked his family. His parents, slain before his eyes, their screams forever etched into his soul. "I am Vincent Vale," he thought, a silent vow echoing within him. "I have dedicated my life to eradicating every last vampire from this world. They took everything from me. Now I will take everything from them." As Vincent rose to leave, Eleanor stepped forward, her voice filled with determination despite the tremor of fear. "Wait, please teach me how to fight them. My village, we need help." Vincent turned, his eyes meeting Eleanor's. He saw in her the same fire that had once driven him, the same desperate need to protect and to fight. For a moment he hesitated. Then, with a curt nod, he spoke. "If you truly wish to fight, then come. But know this, the path is not for the faint of heart." Eleanor's resolve did not waver. She nodded, her grip on the holy symbol tightening. "I'm ready." Without another word, Vincent turned and began walking towards the dark forest that bordered the village. Eleanor followed, leaving behind the safety of her home and stepping into a world of shadows and danger. The moon, peeking through a break in the clouds, cast a pale light on their path. And so the hunt began. Chapter 2. The Priestess's Plea. The forest was a labyrinth of twisted trees and dense undergrowth, the path ahead barely discernible in the dim moonlight. Vincent moved with a silent precision, his steps confident and unerring. Behind him, Eleanor struggled to keep up, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. She had never ventured this far from the village before, and the oppressive darkness seemed to close in around her. "Where are we going?" she finally asked, her voice breaking the silence. "To a place where we won't be disturbed," Vincent replied without turning. "If you're serious about fighting, you'll need to learn quickly. Vampires won't wait for you to be ready." They walked for what felt like hours, the night growing colder and the forest denser. Finally, they arrived at a small clearing. Vincent stopped and turned to face Eleanor, his expression as stern and unreadable as ever. "First, you need to understand what you're up against," he began. "Vampires are not like any other creature. They're stronger, faster, and more cunning. But they have weaknesses. Holy water, silver, sunlight, these can harm them." Eleanor nodded, absorbing every word. "And what about their bite? How do we protect ourselves from that? Vincent's eyes darkened, a shadow passing over his face. You don't. If a vampire bites you, there's little that can be done. The best defense is to avoid getting bitten in the first place. He began to demonstrate, pulling out various weapons and explaining their uses. This is a silver dagger, effective in close combat. And this, he said, holding up a small vial, is holy water. It can burn a vampire's skin on contact. Eleanor watched intently, her mind racing with questions. Why do you do this, Vincent? What drives you to hunt them? For a moment, Vincent was silent. Then he spoke, his voice low and filled with a suppressed fury. They took my family from me, my parents, my sister. I was just a boy when it happened. I swore then that I would dedicate my life to destroying every vampire I could find. It's all I know. Eleanor felt a pang of sympathy but also a surge of determination. Then I will help you. I may not have your skills, but I have my faith and my will. Together, we can make a difference. Vincent looked at her, a flicker of something, respect, perhaps, crossing his features. Very well. We'll start with the basics. Show me what you know about fighting. The training was grueling. Vincent pushed Eleanor to her limits, testing her strength, agility, and resolve. He taught her how to wield the silver dagger, how to throw holy water with precision, and how to move silently and strike quickly. Eleanor learned fast, her natural grace and determination serving her well. Days turned into weeks, and Eleanor's skills grew. She still had much to learn, but Vincent could see the progress. She was no longer the frightened priestess he had first met. She was becoming a warrior in her own right. One night, as they sat by the campfire, Vincent spoke. Tomorrow we'll be going on a hunt. There's a vampire nest not far from here. It's time you faced them for real. Eleanor's heart skipped a beat, a mixture of fear and excitement coursing through her. I'm ready, she said, her voice steady. Vincent nodded. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be a long night. As Eleanor lay down, staring up at the stars, she couldn't help but think of her village and the people she was fighting for. She thought of the innocent lives lost to the vampires and the suffering they had caused. She had chosen this path not just for herself, but for everyone who needed hope in these dark times. With these thoughts in mind, she closed her eyes and drifted into a restless sleep, knowing that tomorrow would be the true beginning of her journey as a vampire hunter. The dawn came quietly, casting a gentle light through the trees. Vincent and Eleanor broke camp and prepared for the day ahead. Vincent's demeanor was as stoic as ever, but there was a sense of anticipation in the air. Today they would face their first real test together. As they made their way through the forest, Vincent spoke, his voice breaking the morning silence. Stay close and follow my lead. These vampires are part of a larger nest. We need to be quick and efficient. Eleanor nodded, gripping her silver dagger tightly. Her training had prepared her for this moment, but the reality of facing a vampire was still daunting. They walked in silence for a while, each lost in their thoughts, until they reached the edge of a small clearing. Vincent held up a hand, signaling for Eleanor to stop. There, he whispered, pointing to a dilapidated barn partially hidden by overgrown vegetation. That's where they're hiding. They approached the barn cautiously, Vincent in the lead with Eleanor close behind. As they neared the entrance, a loud, confident voice rang out, startling them both. Well, what do we have here? A couple of hunters on a morning stroll. A figure stepped out from the shadows, a smirk on his face. He was tall and lean, with a sword strapped to his back and an air of arrogance about him. He looked at Vincent and Eleanor with a mixture of amusement and curiosity. Who are you? Vincent demanded, his crossbow aimed at the stranger. The man raised his hands in mock surrender. Easy there, friend. The name's Lucas Lorne, skilled swordsman and seeker of thrills. I couldn't help but notice you two sneaking around. Figured you might be after the same prey as me. Vincent's eyes narrowed. This isn't a game. These vampires are dangerous. Lucas shrugged, his smirk unwavering. Dangerous, yes, but that's what makes it fun, isn't it? He glanced at Eleanor, giving her a charming smile. "And who might you be, fair lady?" Eleanor, taken aback by his boldness, managed a polite reply. "Eleanor, I'm here to help Vincent." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "Vincent, is it? And what do you call yourself, my grim friend?" "Vincent Vale. Vampire Vanquisher," Vincent replied tersely. "Now, if you're done with introductions, we have work to do." Lucas chuckled. "Straight to the point. I like that. How about I join you? I've been itching for a good fight." Vincent considered this for a moment. Lucas seemed capable and an extra hand could be useful. "Fine, but stay out of our way." With a nod of agreement, the three of them moved toward the barn. Vincent led the way, followed by Eleanor, with Lucas bringing up the rear. As they entered the dark, musty space, the stench of decay hit them. Vincent signaled for silence, his eyes scanning the shadows. A low growl echoed through the barn, followed by the unmistakable sound of rustling. Vincent readied his crossbow, and Eleanor held her dagger close. Lucas unsheathed his sword, his expression turning serious for the first time. Out of the darkness, a pair of glowing red eyes appeared, followed by another, and then another. The vampires emerged, their fangs bared and claws extended. Vincent fired his crossbow, the silver bolt striking the nearest vampire and sending it to the ground with a scream. "Now!" Vincent shouted, and the battle began. Eleanor moved with surprising speed, slashing at the vampires with her dagger. Lucas, his earlier bravado replaced with focused intensity, fought with skill and precision. His sword cutting through the air in a deadly arc. Vincent reloaded and fired with practiced efficiency, each shot finding its mark. The vampires were relentless, their attacks ferocious and coordinated. But Vincent, Eleanor, and Lucas fought with determination and skill, gradually gaining the upper hand. Eleanor's training paid off as she deftly dodged and countered, her holy symbol glowing with a faint light. Finally, the last vampire fell, its body dissolving into ash. The barn was silent once more, the air thick with the aftermath of battle. Vincent lowered his crossbow, breathing heavily. Eleanor wiped her dagger on her sleeve, her heart still racing. Lucas sheathed his sword, a satisfied grin on his face. "Not bad, Vale," Lucas said, clapping Vincent on the shoulder. "Not bad at all." Vincent nodded, his expression softening slightly. "You fought well, Lorne. Maybe there's more to you than just talk." Lucas laughed. "I'll take that as a compliment." Eleanor smiled, feeling a sense of camaraderie forming. "Thank you for your help, Lucas." Lucas bowed theatrically. "Any time, fair lady. It seems we make quite the team." As they left the barn, the sun began to rise, casting a warm glow over the forest. For the first time in a long while, Eleanor felt a glimmer of hope. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. With Vincent's skill, her faith, and Lucas's bravado, they were ready for whatever lay ahead. Together, they would continue the hunt. Chapter 4. The Council's Decree. The morning sun filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows on the forest floor as Vincent, Eleanor, and Lucas made their way back to the village. The adrenaline of the fight still pulsed through their veins, but a sense of accomplishment settled over them like a warm cloak. Vincent led the way, his steps sure and determined, while Lucas kept a watchful eye on their surroundings. Eleanor, her thoughts racing, wondered what their next move would be. As they approached the village, the sounds of daily life began to reach their ears. The clatter of tools, the murmur of voices, and the occasional laugh of children. It was a stark contrast to the violence they had just endured. The villagers looked up in surprise and relief as they saw the trio emerge from the forest. Whispers of admiration and curiosity spread quickly. "Vincent Vale," someone called out. "You did it again." Vincent acknowledged the villagers with a curt nod, but his focus remained on the task ahead. They needed to report their success to the village council and plan their next steps. Eleanor, sensing his urgency, quickened her pace to match his. The village council consisted of the elder, Father Gregory, and a few other respected members. They gathered in the small chapel at the center of the village, a place where decisions were made and guidance was sought. As Vincent, Eleanor, and Lucas entered, the council members rose to greet them. Vincent, Eleanor, Lucas, Father Gregory began, his voice a mix of relief and concern. We've heard of your victory. Praise be. The village owes you a great debt. Vincent inclined his head. The threat is not over, Father. This was just one nest. There are more out there, and we need to be prepared. Elder Marjorie, a wise woman with sharp eyes, spoke up. Vincent is right. We cannot let our guard down. But how do we defend ourselves? Our people are not warriors. Vincent stepped forward, his gaze steady. We will train them. Eleanor and I will teach them the basics of self-defense, how to recognize the signs of vampire presence, and how to use the weapons that can harm them. Lucas has skills that can be invaluable as well. Lucas nodded, his usual swagger tempered by the seriousness of the situation. I'll do my part. We can't afford to let any more lives be lost. Father Gregory clasped his hands together, his expression one of deep contemplation. It will not be easy, but if our people are willing, we must try. Vincent, you have our full support. What do you need from us? First, Vincent replied, we need to gather supplies, silver, holy water, and materials to create weapons. Second, we need a secure place to train. The villagers must be able to practice without fear of attack. Elder Marjorie nodded. We can repurpose the old barn on the edge of the village. It's spacious and secluded enough. Good, Vincent said. We start at first light tomorrow. Spread the word. Anyone willing to fight should be there. As the meeting concluded, the council members dispersed to make the necessary preparations. Vincent, Eleanor, and Lucas stepped outside, the weight of their mission pressing heavily upon them. Do you think the villagers will come? Eleanor asked, her voice tinged with worry. They will, Vincent replied. Fear can be a powerful motivator, but so can hope. We offer them a chance to fight back, to protect their families. They will come. Lucas grinned, his confidence infectious. And we'll be ready for them. Let's show these bloodsuckers what it means to mess with us. Eleanor smiled, her determination renewed. Together, they would prepare the villagers for the battles ahead, teaching them to stand against the darkness that threatened their world. As the sun set, casting long shadows over the village, the promise of a new dawn, a dawn of resistance and resilience, began to take shape. The next morning, as the first light of dawn broke through the trees, the villagers gathered at the old barn. Men and women, young and old, stood together, their faces a mix of fear and resolve. Vincent stepped forward, his voice carrying over the crowd. Today we begin a new chapter. We will not cower in fear. We will fight. Together we will become stronger, and we will protect our home. With that, the training began, and the village of Orendale took its first steps on the path to becoming a bastion of hope and defiance against the vampire threat. Chapter 5: The Forge of Orendale. The villagers stood in a rough line, their faces a blend of determination and apprehension. Vincent scanned the crowd, noting the variety of people who had come forward. Farmers, blacksmiths, tailors, and even a few children who looked on from the edges, eyes wide with curiosity. He nodded to Eleanor and Lucas, who stood ready to assist. Listen up, Vincent began, his voice firm. The first thing you need to understand is that vampires are not invincible. They have weaknesses, and we can exploit those. Today, we start with the basics. He demonstrated how to use a silver dagger, showing the villagers the correct grip and strike techniques. Eleanor followed, explaining the importance of holy water and how to use it effectively. Lucas, with his usual flair, taught them basic swordplay and defensive maneuvers. Hours passed as they drilled, sweat soaking their clothes and determination hardening their resolve. Vincent moved among them, correcting stances and offering encouragement. He saw in their eyes the same fire that had driven him for so long, a desire to protect what they loved. As the sun climbed higher, a break was called, and the villagers gathered in small groups to rest and discuss what they had learned. Vincent, Eleanor, and Lucas convened near the edge of the training ground. They're learning quickly, Eleanor observed, wiping sweat from her brow. I think they can do this. Lucas grinned. They've got spirit, that's for sure. We'll have them ready in no time. Vincent nodded, but his mind was already racing ahead. Training the villagers was only part of the solution. They needed more weapons and supplies to sustain a prolonged fight against the vampires. He turned to Lucas. Can you lead a team to gather more silver and holy water? We need to stockpile as much as we can. Lucas nodded. Consider it done. I'll take a few of the stronger ones with me. We'll hit every smithy and chapel we can find. As Lucas organized his team, Eleanor approached Vincent. What about the children? They're scared, and their parents are distracted with training. We need to find a way to keep them safe and occupied. Vincent considered this. You're right. We can set up a safe area in the village center, guarded at all times. Maybe you could organize some activities to keep them engaged and teach them simple safety measures. Eleanor smiled. I can do that. They need to feel like they're part of this too. With their tasks divided, the trio went back to work. Vincent resumed training the adults, pushing them to improve their skills and endurance. Eleanor gathered the children, teaching them basic first aid and how to recognize signs of vampire presence. Lucas and his team set off to gather more supplies, their departure marked by a collective cheer from the villagers. Days turned into weeks, and the village of Orendale transformed. The old barn became a bustling training ground, and the village square a safe haven for the children. The villagers' skills improved, their confidence grew, and a sense of unity spread through the community. One evening, as the sun set and the villagers gathered around a large bonfire, Vincent stood before them, a rare smile on his face. You've all come a long way. I'm proud of each and every one of you. But remember, this is just the beginning. We must stay vigilant and prepared. Father Gregory stepped forward, holding a beautifully crafted silver sword. Vincent, on behalf of the village, we present you with this. It is a symbol of our gratitude and our commitment to this fight. Vincent accepted the sword, its weight a reminder of the responsibility he bore. Thank you, Father. I will wield it with honor. As the villagers celebrated their progress, Eleanor approached Vincent. We've done well, but we can't stay on the defensive forever. We need to take the fight to the vampires. Vincent's eyes met hers, filled with determination. You're right. It's time we go on the offensive. We'll track down their nests and destroy them before they can strike again. Lucas, overhearing their conversation, joined them. Sounds like my kind of plan. Let's show these bloodsuckers what happens when you mess with Orendale. The three of them stood together, a united front against the darkness. The road ahead was fraught with danger, but they were ready. Together with the villagers, they would fight to reclaim their world from the grip of terror. Chapter 6. Into the Heart of Darkness. The next morning, Vincent, Eleanor, and Lucas gathered their gear and set out to hunt the vampire nests. They left behind a well-prepared village, confident in the villagers' ability to defend themselves. Their first destination was an abandoned fortress rumored to be a haven for vampires. The journey was long and arduous, the path winding through dense forests and treacherous terrain. As they traveled, Vincent shared what he knew about their enemies, detailing the various vampire clans and their leaders. Each clan had its own territory, its own strengths and weaknesses. After days of travel, they reached the outskirts of the fortress. It loomed before them, a crumbling relic of a bygone era. The air around it felt heavy with malevolence, and a sense of foreboding settled over them. Vincent turned to his companions. This is it. Stay close, stay quiet, and be ready for anything. They approached the fortress with caution, moving silently through the shadows. The entrance was guarded by two vampires, their eyes scanning the darkness. Vincent signaled for Lucas to take the one on the left while he and Eleanor handled the other. With swift, precise movements, they dispatched the guards and slipped inside. The interior of the fortress was even more foreboding, with ancient tapestries hanging from the walls and the scent of decay in the air. They navigated through the labyrinthine corridors, alert for any sign of movement. As they ventured deeper, The sounds of muffled voices reached their ears. Vincent held up a hand, signaling for them to stop. They peered around a corner and saw a group of vampires gathered in a large hall, their leader addressing them. "We must strike at the villages before they have a chance to organize," the leader said, his voice cold and commanding. "They are growing bolder, and we cannot allow them to challenge our dominance." Vincent's eyes narrowed. This was their chance. He whispered to Eleanor and Lucas, outlining a plan. They would create a distraction, drawing the vampires into the open where they could be picked off one by one. Lucas grinned, his hand on the hilt of his sword. "Let's give them a show they'll never forget." With that, they sprang into action. Lucas charged into the hall, shouting taunts and swinging his sword with deadly precision. The vampires turned in shock, their leader bellowing orders. Vincent and Eleanor took advantage of the chaos, firing bolts and throwing vials of holy water. The battle was fierce and chaotic. Vincent moved through the fray with lethal efficiency, his crossbow and silver sword dealing death to any vampire that crossed his path. Eleanor fought with a mix of grace and ferocity, her training and faith guiding her every move. Lucas, his swagger replaced by deadly focus, cut down vampires with every swing of his blade. Despite their initial surprise, the vampires quickly regrouped and fought back with savage intensity. The hall echoed with the sounds of clashing weapons and inhuman screams. Vincent, Eleanor, and Lucas found themselves back to back, surrounded by snarling vampires. "Hold the line," Vincent shouted. "We can't let them break us." They fought with everything they had, each of them taking down vampires with relentless determination. Slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. The vampires, realizing they were outmatched, started to retreat. Vincent seized the moment, charging at their leader. Their blades clashed in a furious duel, each strike filled with a lifetime of hatred. With a final, powerful blow, Vincent drove his sword through the leader's heart, ending his reign of terror. The remaining vampires fled into the night, their morale shattered. Vincent, Eleanor, and Lucas stood victorious, their breaths heavy and their bodies exhausted. The hall was littered with the remains of their enemies, a testament to their resolve. As they caught their breath, Vincent turned to his companions. "This is just the beginning. We have to keep pushing, keep fighting. We can't stop until every last vampire is gone." Eleanor nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "We'll see this through to the very end." Lucas sheathed his sword, a satisfied grin on his face. "Count me in. Let's finish what we started." Together, they stepped out of the fortress, ready to face whatever dangers lay ahead. The fight was far from over, but they had taken a crucial step toward reclaiming their world. With their strength, their unity, and their unwavering resolve, they would continue to hunt the darkness, driving it back one battle at a time.